We are back. Another edition of Don't Change the Channel, Scan Source Podcast. Gabby's over here playing tricks on us. I have vacation brain. I am leaving tomorrow for Mexico. Just missed the hurricane. Gabby, I know you were tracking that one diligently after our last episode.
But he was like, yeah, I might miss my vacation because of a hurricane. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about those.
Ian, are you getting on a plane for the first time?
No, I went up to Boston a few months ago. So I'm looking
Gotcha.
forward to getting back on the plane.
Yeah.
Are you going to get stuck there? Like, what if they don't let you back in because of Rona?
Then I live in a resort now. This show will get a lot more interesting. I can promise you that. Was doing a little bit of reading earlier. Saw something on CRN that felt applicable since we talked on a recent episode about how I thought email was dying and that I love all of the new Teams platforms. There was an article on CRN called Confronting COVID-19, How Partners Made Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Cisco WebEx Essential Viewing. So pretty interesting read. And essentially it was talking about how obviously we saw this growth in the UCaaS space early on, and this is obviously some of the attribution back to that, but how these Teams platforms have made a lot of this virtual working so possible because, instead of having huddle spaces, we have Teams spaces. Instead of having meetings, we have video calls. And it did share some interesting statistics, Phil, which you're my numbers guy, that I thought were interesting. And a couple of the partners mentioned in the article were some of our partners.
Yeah, there was a couple that they interviewed directly, and some traditionally WebEx partners that we've sold to. And it's kind of interesting to kind of look through all these numbers to see that the amount of growth. I mean, it's like, one of these, like Zoom is 355% up year over year. That's insane. And now they're worth more than IBM. Okay,
That's wild.
That is wild.
When you think about that. Also it tells you
IBM's got to be furious.
Correct. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of did a quick search on some things to see what those top three platforms, what their daily users are. It's over 600 million between the three combined. And those numbers were from March, so it's kind of up from there, I'm sure. But that's incredible. And I'm got to, before next time, find what it looked like a year ago or 2 years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Through the roof. And it does talk a little bit in here about services and some of the adoption services and stuff. And, we actually tried to figure that out internally some more as well. But you got a lot of people learning this, a lot of partners selling this, a lot of agents selling this. And then you got a lot of people like me and Gabby trying to teach our parents how to use it. So,
Love it.
these services on top of it are going to be hyper valuable.
So, yeah, and that's, I think, but to your point, and we've talked about this on episodes before, the people using it at home, to me, in personal life, has benefited the corporate adoption as well, because people are not only being forced to use it at work, they're being able to first learn it well enough to go teach someone else. So therefore, they have to be even better at knowing the technology.
Yeah, and which makes it interesting, because if you kind of look at some of these companies, we won't list any of the names, but they have taken somewhat different, there's multiple of these out there, and they've all taken somewhat of a different route to market. Some have gone enterprise, and it'll infiltrate the commercial and individual consumer space, and then some have gone the other way. And it's, you've seen success across both, but it's really interesting to see how, you're not using these things, because a lot of this stuff you would have said 2 years ago, a year ago, 6 months ago, this is something you use at work. You don't use it at home. I have used all of these platforms with my family before now. So, and then, like I said, me and Gabby have had to figure out how to teach our parents to use the call from computer for the audio. That seems to be a
It's a challenge.
There's people at work you still need to teach that to as well.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah. Yeah.
What I thought was interesting about that article too was when they said like people are going to expect that same experience when they go back into the office. Because I mean, I think we all remember how much easier to video call just working from home. So I think that will be interesting, making that transition back to the office.
It will, because you think about going into some of these rooms. You know, we have multiple room systems at ScanSource throughout the building. They all seem to be very different, and it tends to be sometimes it's a lot easier because of the user interface. Just you do it 5 times a day, 10 times a day on video calls like we're on here, and it's a lot easier than going into a room 10 minutes early to try to hope you figure out how to get it set up in those 10 minutes before people start showing up. But how about the fact that, you know, we've worked for a couple of years on video. Imagine how many people are going to go back into an office and video has now been kind of adopted across the board, and how many people are going to be on video sitting at their desk that weren't ever before, and how many people are going to have to learn the, you know, 4 people in a cubicle, not social distancing, how all 4 of them are on videos and got to remember to mute their computers and aren't echoing, and I can see you moving here, I can see you moving there. It makes you wonder if some of the video conferencing will change the office space just as much as social distancing, so that there's not people in the background when we all return to the office.
Yeah, I think it will. And that's, it's interesting because I've been thinking back about the rooms back in our office and how they are laid out and will be laid out. And I had a video call with my boss and my boss's boss earlier this week. I was not in trouble. And they were in a larger conference room, socially distanced, but kind of arranged so that they were both on video simultaneously, which I thought was interesting, but probably isn't the efficient use of space when all of us are back in the office. So whether we have video rooms or huddles, you know, single person video rooms set up that allow us to have those conversations, I think it's interesting. And to Gabby's point, the adoption of video for everyone and maybe the death of the call-in number, I think will be a good thing.
Yeah.
Let's hope that call-in number dies.
Yeah. Well, so think about our office. You've got a few really large conference rooms, but traditionally they're small, holding 4 to 8 to 10. We'll say 4 to 10. But now those are some of those small ones from you can't get 6 feet apart from something.
Nope.
So they're individual rooms now.
Yep.
The larger ones that hold 10 now
can't
really
wait to go sit in one by myself and tell people that I'm social distancing. Sorry.
Right.
It's a workspace.
So if you're going to have a meeting with more than 4 people in it, your only option is one of these platforms, even if you're all in the same office. And that's going to be very interesting. Or we're going to see some conference rooms get really big and some walls get knocked down. So, yeah.
We shall see. What I do know is, regardless of where we meet or how we meet, a strong internet connection is an important piece of that.
You've learned that, haven't you?
What?
You've learned that, haven't you?
I have learned that. I obviously got a new router semi-recently. We talk with our guest today, Perry Correll of Extreme Networks, about my new internet router. And we do talk about the new Wi-Fi 6 and kind of what the future holds for the internet. It was a great discussion with Perry, who is one of my favorite guests. We always learn something with Perry. I feel like he's always teaching us something, always giving us something new. And the new this time was not only Wi-Fi 6, but Wi-Fi 6E, which I had seen, but hadn't really taken the time to learn anything. So he took the time to teach us. So it was a great interview with Perry. We always learn something. We always have a little fun. Obviously, getting to see his office is always interesting as well, as we're doing these on video now. And today's interview with Perry is brought to you by Extreme. All right, we are joined once again by Perry Correll. Perry, you're a recurring guest now on the show. It's great to have you back. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now that I'm back again, I guess this is going to go to residuals in the future. There'll be money coming in, so we're good.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like Netflix. You know, with friends and The Office, you get like 10 cents a show or something.
Oh, God.
So how are you? I mean, how are you? How are things? I feel like it's like a wellness check at this point for all of us, but it's been, we've been home for 6.5, 7 months at this point. So how are you? I know you're in Chattanooga. You're always home, right?
Yeah, well, I work from home. My wife's not sure why I won't get on an airplane and go somewhere. She's getting tired of me. So, you know, the flight attendants and the TSA are forgetting who I am. So gotta go somewhere one of these days. But no, you know, working from home, I've always done that. And so it's not that big a deal. And, you know, depending on where you are in the country right now, you know, things could be the same or getting much better or whatever. But the one good thing about this is that it kind of showed us how important Wi-Fi is. I'll throw a little bit of marketing type stuff. You think about it, everybody, you know, they left their office on a Friday or they left their school or they telemedicine, and Monday morning they're back in work on the kitchen table. And if it wasn't for Wi-Fi, I mean, just think about how difficult that would have been with, you know, cell phone connections or stuff like that. It just enabled, for better or for worse, us to actually, you know, be predictive and continuous.
So I'm going to throw myself under the bus here, and Philip knew this was coming. I saw your face right away. So we moved recently, Perry, and my Wi-Fi was awful when we moved. And I was dropping the internet 4 times a day. So I was calling our service provider, and you get transferred all around, the whole rigmarole. I'm on hold for 4 hours. So by the time I get someone, I'm fuming. And we had upgraded our internet to the top speed and everything. We're, you know, paying the premium for it. So I'm fuming, and I finally get someone, and they're like, "We're not showing any drops or, you know, service issues in your area at all. When was the last time you updated your router?" And I was like, "I don't know, a few years." And I'm thinking, like, this person, I work for a tech company. This person doesn't know what they're talking about. And the lady goes, "Well, how long's a few years?" And I sat there and I started counting on my fingers, and, you know, I was like, "It's been 8 years, actually." And she was like, "I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news. That's your problem." And lo and behold, Perry, I went and bought a new router, and my internet has been flawless.
The other one said 11B on it or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, and I knew I was in trouble because I'm trying to push firmware updates out to it, and it's not working. And I was like, I got a big issue here.
No, it's funny. I mean, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, but it's like Extreme had their virtual connect very recently.
Yep,
it's
it was
an
awesome.
thing. And I had to set up and actually do a video and stuff. And beforehand, the people were, you know, making sure everything works. And they said, yeah, obviously you're plugged into a wired connection. I go, no, I'm not. You know, I'm on wireless. Mind you, I've got enterprise class wires in the house. And then I got a gig fiber coming out of that. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty good. So we'll get through with that.
Yeah, so that's we obviously wanted to have you on today. So we've been talking a lot recently about Wi-Fi 6.
Yep. And
we started talking, and it was, you know, who better than Perry to come teach us a little bit about it. So let's start there. Let's break it down. I feel like there's some myths around it at this point. There's some legends about it. So what's the reality of Wi-Fi 6? When can we expect it?
Myths, legends, lies, you know, they all kind of mix in at some point. We go, but kind of take a step back. Wi-Fi 6 is the name of the Wi-Fi Alliance certification. What we're really talking about is 11AX, which is the actual standard technology. So the IEEE does standards, the Wi-Fi Alliance does certifications, and that's just making sure things interoperate. You know, just because us and other vendors made an AP with the same standards, it doesn't always mean they talk to each other, which is what the Wi-Fi Alliance is all about. Let's make sure you built it the same way so it works. So Wi-Fi 6 actually kind of launched about 2 years ago. You started seeing products. About a year ago, the certification program actually started. And the important thing to understand is that we as vendors really screwed up Wi-Fi for the last 15 years or so. And the reason I say that is about every 18 to 24 months, vendors, partners, whatever, would go to a customer and say, "Hey, I got this brand new technology. It's the greatest thing in the world. Going to solve all your problems. It's faster than light. You got to buy it." And we did that for 11G and 11N and 11AC wave 1, 11AC wave 2. And when 11AX came out, it was like, yep, heard that before. You know, so why bother? And it's important to understand that Wi-Fi 6, 11AX is different. Yeah, I know I got marketing in my title, so you don't necessarily have to believe me. But it is different than all the ones before. And it's because understanding the technology that in all previous versions of Wi-Fi for the last 20 years or so, only one device can talk at a time. And that's actually surprising to a lot of people, because a lot of times you have people on RFPs saying, well, how many associations can I have for a radio? And you got people saying, you know, 24, 56. There's one vendor that says 512. And what they're talking about is how many devices can actually associate or be connected to that radio, to that access point. Reality is that's true. Most vendors can do some number like that, but only one person gets to talk at a time. And that's the thing most people miss, because if I got 500 people on one radio at one time, they're all contending to get access. It's like going down, you know, a 50-lane wide highway and coming to a toll booth that only one car can go through at a time. And that's the way Wi-Fi has always been. Now it changed. Wi-Fi 6, 11AX has something called OFDMA, orthogonal frequency division with multiple access. Big name, you sound really, really smart if you actually say it enough. And what that actually does is it allows multiple devices, half dozen, couple dozen, to communicate simultaneously, which means if I have two devices maybe doing nurse calls or voice or whatever, voice doesn't take a lot of bandwidth, but it wants consistent access, which is the whole problem with QoS. So if I can have more than one person talking at a time, that's a tremendous differentiator for Wi-Fi 6. And there are some people that say it's even kind of like Wi-Fi switching, but the Wi-Fi nerds really freak out when you say that. But it actually allows more than one device to target. That was the big difference. That was the big change that happened with Wi-Fi 6. And one of the other things about, and there was about 5 or 6 other features in there, but that was the biggest one. The other thing to understand, a lot of people are afraid of Wi-Fi 6 because it's like it's brand new. You know, is it going to work? Am I the bleeding edge of technologies? It's important to realize, and I hate to say this, but there was very little technology brand new with 11AX, with Wi-Fi 6. It's a lot of technology that already existed that was just brought together. OFDMA has actually been in the cellular side since 2007. I mean, if you're a cellular guy, WiMAX, old technology, that actually used this at that point. So even if you've got like a cell phone today and it's an 11AC cell phone or 11N cell phone, it probably has OFDMA on the LTE side of it, that functionality built in. So it's not brand new technology, but what it does is it allows Wi-Fi to be much more efficient. And yeah, you hear people saying that Wi-Fi 6 is faster. And yeah, on paper, it actually is a little bit faster. But the biggest deal is it's more efficient. I get to actually, instead of talking to you and you and you and you, I talk to you all at once and you all talk back to me at once. So, and the AP's in control of everything. So that's the big change with Wi-Fi 6. Now, the interesting thing that's happening right now is Wi-Fi 6 isn't the end. Wi-Fi continues to evolve. The next thing is Wi-Fi 6E, which is a big deal. People start talking about 6 gigahertz of Wi-Fi. And it's like, well, 6E is here. Maybe I'll just wait for that. And then a year after that, you're going to have Wi-Fi 6 enhancements. And God forbid, they've already got Wi-Fi 7 on the drawing board. So Wi-Fi is going to continually evolve over the years. But Wi-Fi 6, all that really does is it operates in the 6 gigahertz band, a lot more spectrum available. But that's still, I mean, on paper, you're probably going to start seeing products early next year show up, but in reality, its use case is probably 18 to 24 months away before there's any real density. And in fact, outdoor 6E, 6 gigahertz, they haven't even figured out how to do it yet, because they got to make sure that they don't impact incumbents, existing 6 gigahertz type technologies. So the groups, the carrier side and the Wi-Fi side, they haven't even gotten really together in a meeting yet to decide how to do this. So, and once again, the government's involved, the FCC's involved, so you know it's going to take the rest of our life. No, only joking, but it's going to take a lot of time for all these groups to agree. So Wi-Fi 6 is actually what you want to think about right now. Wi-Fi 6E is down the road, and Wi-Fi 7's after that. And so it's an interesting time, but there's always a new technology coming down the road. What 6E is going to give me is just a lot more bandwidth. There's not a lot of new technology like Wi-Fi 6 with 6E. It's just Wi-Fi 6 today, I can do the 2.4 band and the 5 gigahertz band. I'm just adding 6 gigahertz, which is huge to use that word. It's, they say it's about twice as much bandwidth as the existing technology. That's actually a lie. Well, it's a myth. It's a rumor. It's a mistake. What it actually is, it's about 4 times more usable bandwidth. Because if you look at the Wi-Fi spectrum we have today in the 5 gigahertz, a lot of it's really not usable because DFS, and people avoid DFS channels. You don't have this issue in the 6 gigahertz. So I get 60 channels. I mean, right now on 5 gigahertz, you might get 15 or 16 channels depending on where you are or what you're doing. I'm getting 60 channels in the 6 gigahertz. 2.4 and 5 aren't going away, so I'm just going to have a lot more choices. So it's kind of exciting to be involved in this time. But as I said, Wi-Fi 7, if you go Google it, it's there. It's 802.11be. The IEEE is still working on that standards, and they do it quick. It only took them 9 years to get 11AX done. So they'll just kick right to it soon.
That's right.
So, now take a breath.
Yeah,
No,
that's crazy.
Kyle DeWitt's going to have to step up because I just learned a lot really quickly. So, but that was so there's 6E coming down the road. Where does 5G fit into this as competition to it, and as a consumer, what I'm looking at here with Wi-Fi 6 and 5G?
Well, just forget about it. Anybody who just heard you said that, just imagine he didn't say that. You don't have to worry about it. 5G doesn't exist. It's a figment of their imagination. No,
I mean, right now it is kind of, right? It's all like fake, right? Your phone says 5G right now. Isn't it a lie?
Wait. Let's see. A lie is a strong word. It's
it's marketing, though.
It's a potential. Can't
It's
pick on marketing. That's my title. I can't say that.
Me
But
too.
no, 5G is a concept, and it's kind of funny. If you go back to, what about 2012, the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, formed a work group called IMT 2020, International Mobile Telecom in 2020, what the world's going to look like 8 years from now. And what happened is, on the unlicensed side, that's where 11AX, that's where Wi-Fi 6 came from. On the licensed side, that's where 5G grew out of. And the whole idea is I need lots of bandwidth, 10 gig, which they both offer. I want to support millions, billions of users and massive amounts of communication. So they both were actually kind of working in the same direction, one on the licensed side, one on the unlicensed side. The thing is that if you talk to anybody in the Wi-Fi Alliance, and on the carrier side, you got something called the Wireless Broadband Alliance, the WBA. And if you talk to any, I shouldn't say it, but intelligent consultants, they're all going to tell you that these technologies are going to work together. I mean, there are certain things that 5G does better. If you're in your car on your cell phone driving down the street, yeah, I could put up enough access points that you could support it, but it's just not functional. It's not that usable. And the way I try to put it is, cellular communication gives you lower bandwidth over a large area, where Wi-Fi tends to give you more bandwidth over a smaller area. And yeah, there's going to be areas where they overlap, but for the most part, they actually complement each other. A lot of times people say they compete, and you think of MMA type battle between them. And there's areas where they'll overlap. There'll areas where maybe Wi-Fi is better, but since I already have 5G, 5G will do that same thing good enough. And the same thing with Wi-Fi. So they're not going to, one is not going to displace another. And I'll give you a good reason to understand that. Right now, there's approximately 14 to 15 billion Wi-Fi devices somewhere on the earth. The latest analysts say that within the next 5 years, there's going to be 1.5 billion 5G devices. The math doesn't work. You just can't displace that existing stuff. So I will guarantee you that your current phone or your next phone, definitely the one after that, will support 5G. But I will guarantee your laptop won't. Your tablet won't, for the most part. Your wireless printer that's sitting behind you wherever you happen to be sit right now, the wireless connection on your smart TV, those are going to be Wi-Fi. So in the enterprise, for the most part, and in the home, you're always going to have Wi-Fi, and you might have some cellular to come in, 5G, CBRS, private LTE, some type of technology. But once again, it's only a couple of, I don't want to pick on carriers and whatever, that are really pushing this 5G only. They're going to complement each other. They really are. And on the CBRS side is kind of a cool thing. That, it's like you're in a restaurant. You go to your favorite restaurant, and sometimes the cellular signal just stinks, and they might not have Wi-Fi inside yet. And if that restaurant calls up your local carrier and said, "Hey, I need better Wi-Fi," how long do you think it's going to take them to put a new tower in that area? forever, but they can actually install a CBRS, which kind of looks just like an access point, and then you'll get wireless if you're Devon Sports CBRS.
So, Perry, you may have just segued perfectly into my next question for you.
Okay.
CBRS, which I think is one of the most interesting things, and I only know enough to scratch the surface, I feel like. So Extreme obviously partners with the NFL, and Phil and I are huge sports guys. Is CBRS kind of part of that solution? And I guess really I want you to go into everything, I guess, that you can, that you guys are doing with the NFL, because a lot of the analytics are really cool. But is that kind of a CBRS play?
Not necessarily CBR as much, but private LTE, which CBRS is a subset. So it's going to fit in there in some areas. And that's the biggest challenge. I mean, we partnered with a couple of carriers in there, and, you know, trying to do 70,000 people in a stadium, or I guess these days it's 15,000, whatever the number happens to be. It's tough. And the biggest problem with that is it's actually knocking down the signal. You know, it's got too much energy and stuff. But there's going to be a mixture. Once again, in those stadiums, you're going to have lots of Wi-Fi. You're also going to have lots of cellular. And the biggest issue is going to be how they hand over between them and what's called open roaming with the WBA type stuff and that functionality. But they are going to work together in that environment. As far as the NFL, we've partnered with them since, I think we started in 2012. We partnered first with the New England Patriots, I think, in the stadium up there, because obviously we had a big office up in Massachusetts and New Hampshire and stuff, so they had to go that way, and they still had a good quarterback. I don't know what they have today.
They have a great quarterback still. Thank you.
In Tampa, right?
No, they have Cameron Newton up there, baby.
I know. I'm only picking on you. But, you know, we partner with the NFL for two different things. Obviously, we think we do a really good job on Wi-Fi, but was actually just as important, maybe more important, is the analytics part. You know, we've got a bunch of NFL stadiums and obviously college stadiums that we've installed the Wi-Fi in, but we've actually got 2 to 3 times more that we just installed the analytics in. And, you know, while the existing vendor is got some life left in their product, and I'm not going to pick on anybody, we're actually doing the analytics to kind of see what's happening in that, and the different teams get to see what they happen. The user experience is huge now. It used to just be Wi-Fi and connect. Now it's not just connect, it's how well they connect, what you're doing. You know, there's more people streaming up stuff than down stuff now. I mean, I don't understand this. You know, I used to go to the Dolphin games way back when, and I go to watch the game. Now I guess people come to film the game or whatever they're doing. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But we do the analytics. We've done the analytics for the last 7 Super Bowls, and the numbers are just unbelievable. I mean, it's like 26 terabytes worth of information, and there's more Wi-Fi usage after kickoff than before kickoff. So I don't know if people are just sitting there streaming the game to friends or whatever, and that's the important thing, is that, you know, the stadiums want to see what people are looking at. They're trying to use the user experience. They're trying to, let's just be honest, they're trying to sell stuff with the loyalty apps and stuff. You know, if your team is doing great, you know, they might give you ability to buy some jerseys. And if your team is doing less so great, maybe they'll have discounts for next week's ticket. So that's what they're trying to use as far as the experience, and even security. You know, Wi-Fi is important. You don't even think about that, but let's say you're in the stadiums and you're with your family, and there's some slightly inebriated individual in front of you just making noise and all that stuff. And what you can do is you can actually put in where you're located and whatever, and say what's going on. The security cameras would go and they'd look at the guy, and if they decide he needs to go, security would come, just haul him away. They don't have to ask you what happened or anything. They already know what happened. Or we've got another stadium. You know, what's the most important thing to do? Is it coming close to the halftime and you're in the stadium? You've been there for, you know, 2.5 hours.
The bathroom.
Exactly. I want to see which bathroom has the shortest line. There's actually people that do that, and the user experience, or being able to go and buy your 2 hot dogs and 2 Cokes for $47 online and just go pick it up, you know, instead of waiting in that long line. So there's a lot of user experience. There's some stadiums that are like, hey, I'm going to let you FaceTime to the Jumbotron for a certain amount of money, or however you do that. So there's a tremendous amount of user experience in there, and we're, you know, the bad part is I'm not an SE anymore, and I don't get to go and attend the games free just so I can make sure nothing happens. So
are there challenges, or I guess benefits, depending on the age of the stadium? So if there's an older stadium, I'm trying to think, I don't know if the NFL has any real old stadiums anymore, with how all of them have built new just cathedrals to football at this point. But I guess so some of the newer stadiums, Atlanta, LA, Minnesota, like I'm sure that's a little bit easier of a setup for you from an analytics and networking perspective than maybe an older stadium.
Actually, it's not easier or harder. It's just kind of like a difference. The older stadiums, you had more beams going up that you could put APs on, where the newer stadiums, the engineering effort, you have less big beams. But a lot of times with right now, we're doing Wi-Fi, we're putting it under the seats as far as the enclosures, because once again, the issue is not propagating long distance. The issue is actually knocking down the signal. So putting it underneath the seat and having to go through some wood, concrete, or some large individual actually helps knock down that signal a little bit. You know, big bags of water tend to do that. And you're actually able to reuse channels, which once again is going to be tremendous once we get into the 6 gigahertz when we're outdoors, because right now we've got to reuse about 15 channels in the 5 gigahertz space. Now we're going to have almost 60 channels. Once again, there's all kinds of rules. There's what's called AFC, automatically frequency coordination, that when you deploy 6 gigahertz outdoors, you actually have to consult the database and make sure there's not an incumbent 6 gigahertz military satellite uplink, stuff like that you would interfere with. So it's a challenge, and we have dedicated groups of our SEs that do that. We also have partners that, you know, very, very focused on that. So
well, I appreciate it. You're doing God's work, because there's nothing more frustrating than going to a football game and having 0 cell reception and the inability to text, call, or, you know, reach out to people you're trying to meet up with or whatever you're trying to do. So
you know what you do when that happens? You watch the game.
I know, but it's like, hey, like Clemson. So I live in 45 minutes from Clemson now, and I went there. So like, you know, you have friends in town, you know, buddies from school 10 years ago who are like, hey, I'm trying to meet up real quick at halftime. And I got no reception, no Wi-Fi, no nothing. And I'm like, oh, this is a nightmare.
No, it's just so funny how things have changed every time. My cousin used to have season tickets to the Orange Bowl. We're talking late 70s here and stuff. I mean, just you go and look.
Yeah, Ian, see, you're different. See, like for me, I would use it at halftime and before the game to see other scores. And during the game, I would be sending nothing out. But you'd be sending things out, wouldn't you?
Yeah, something to see.
You know what's funny? It's also funny how important the Wi-Fi is when you go internationally, because internationally they get to bet.
Yep.
Or, you know,
That's
I'm sure
all
they
there
bet
is.
here too.
You go to a European football game, it's all there is like people gambling, people coming in. That's like I went to London this spring, and that's like, I mean, you come in and grab a pint and it's just everyone's talking about that right there. You're right.
Exactly. So it's probably happened in the U.S. too, but I don't know what's happening now that Vegas has got their own stadium. So we'll see what happens.
That's true. All right. Last 2 questions. Phil, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Let's have a little fun.
What'd you say?
I said, let's have a little fun.
Yeah, let's do this. All right. So I'm going to choose which one I want to do. There we go. So what's the best compliment you have ever received?
Best compliment I ever received is probably I still look like my LinkedIn picture.
Oh,
that's
good.
a really good one, actually.
Which is probably 10 years old. No,
that's a great one. We work with a lot of people who don't. So
yeah,
probably that. I present a lot. I really do, live or this is live, but you know, in seminars and webinars and all this stuff. And I get a lot of good feedback on the way I present, and it's because, and one of the things I think is so important about presenting is you got all these classes you can take and all this other stuff, and I tend to think most of that is garbage. And I think the most important thing is know what you're talking about and just have some passion. I mean, I think that's the key point. I mean, we all remember when we were in school and stuff, and we'd have a professor or a teacher, and you know they knew all about this stuff, but it was the most boring lecture you've ever had in your life, and it's just shoot me now, or you know, people just talking off the cuff, and you know they don't know what they're talking about. So I think that's, and I like that because I enjoy doing this type of stuff. So
yeah, I will vouch for that compliment and say that it is very true.
Absolutely.
Well, you know your stuff, and yet once again have some passion, and whether you're in marketing or whether in sales or just regular your life, you know, every one of you guys, you know, I don't know you personally that much stuff, but I'm sure there's a hobby, there's something that you really like to do that you could probably get up and talk just forever on that one subject or whatever. So
yeah, well, that's why we love having you on the show, Perry. All right, last question. So we started off talking about this. We've all been home for 6-7 months. We've all been stuck on Zoom calls with family, friends, coworkers, acquaintances, whatever. So we've been asking people this recently, and it's been interesting. In your opinion, who would be the worst TV show character to be on a Zoom call with?
You know, the problem with that is depending on your age, who's the appropriate thing. I look at, back in, 10 years ago, one of the series on TV was Monk. And this was a obsessive compulsive individual, and like everything would change, and you back up and say, no, stop that. Let's redo that again, or let's go back over again. And it's kind of funny that we were, one of the guys in the work, he was doing a recording for somebody the other day, or 2 weeks ago, and he called me up and he said, I'm 4 hours and 15 minutes into a 30-minute recording, because the individual just, well, let's do that again. Let's change that. And like that word and stuff. So it could be nuts. Whereas, I tend to, I like this. I think very casual, I might stumble over words and stuff, but that's the key point, I think, is to get a message across.
That reminds me, have you ever seen the show Parks and Rec? There's a scene where
Yeah.
Rob Lowe's character, Chris Traeger, makes them re-record a video shoot all day. So he would be on my list.
Yeah, it's just, once again, I think the quality of the content is a lot of times more important than the quality of the production. Though obviously there's got to be a balance between the two.
No,
so,
I think, and we talked about this section at web seminar we just did for ScanSource. I'm in marketing as well. And kind of the democratization of content is that I think that's the big takeaway from the quarantine here, is that not everything needs to be this polished, beautiful piece. And that as long as, to your point, the quality of the content is there, it doesn't kind of matter necessarily what it looks like always. No,
exactly. And we've all seen that stuff. I mean, I think all of us are so sick of Zoom calls and WebEx. One of the things, though, it has done is, you got to think about this. Imagine 8-9 months ago, if you were going to have how should I say, like a professional outdoor Zoom call or whatever. I mean, everybody's dressed to the T's and everything in the background. Now, you're on these calls, kids walk by, there's cats walking across the thing, most people, I mean, one of the great questions would be, great, I can see you. What are you wearing on your pants? It's like, or are you wearing, everybody's seeing each other from the top up. And so it's changed so much that we've gotten so, casual Fridays have turned into whatever, as long as it's not offensive, you're good to go. Where do you, now you get to figure out where people, what their lives are like, car guy, kind of white wall there. You need to work on that again. So,
I know. We just moved in. There'll be some pictures and art up here soon.
Yeah. I'm coming to you live from a garage, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice, 'cause it's cooling down a little bit. So.
All right. Well, perfect. Perry, we appreciate it.
Hey, I enjoy it. Happy to do this anytime. There's always new stuff coming down the pipe. And the final thought, you mentioned 5G. You can go search now, and there's a 6G out there. It just never ends.
Never ends. Well, we'll have to have you back on and talk about that soon then.
I don't want to know about that. Okay, thanks a lot, Ian. Phil, Gabby, appreciate it.